Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome back to Royal News Network. I'm so sorry it took me a second. I was trying to actually figure out if I could screen share a bit of what I've seen of The Crown so far, and it just was not working. And it closed my browser as I was trying to do it, and it just didn't seem to want to work. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this live screen of The Crown, which is, I've started watching it. I am not impressed. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts as well because I had to work today, so I wasn't able to see everything. But I had some strong impressions by first watching it, and I'd love to hear what you guys think as well. So I just want to say good evening to Alec and Johanna and Owls. And you just said, Johanna said she watched it so far and is not impressed with Philip. Owl said just watched series 5 to say it was not good. Alex said wasn't a fan of the actor for Philip. And Andrea, good morning. Talking about Dodi Al-Fayed and Jennifer and Meredith. Victoria, Michelle, Jennifer, good evening, everyone. I almost said good morning because I usually do these in the morning. So I'm just so off so far. So I just thought a bit we could do some bit of questions as well. But I just thought I would give my initial impressions. I've watched about an episode and a half so far. And what I'm thinking is it's dull. It's dull. I don't know if anybody else, let me know in the comments if you guys had the same impression. I think it's boring. I'm just watching this going, I mean, it's gorgeously shot. It's beautifully shot, I think. And I think that's the real benefit of it, but honestly, I'm not impressed with it. Just seems very, very slow. Very slow. And I think that was a bit of it at the beginning in the first couple seasons too, but that's what I noticed initially is that I just thought it was kind of dull. And for all they have to do, I feel like there's just not much there. And Alec, I see your comment there about the Philip stuff being boring. I think so. That's I feel like is a drag on the show. I almost feel like they're focusing on so much that in a way they can't streamline the show. Because if this is about the crown, it should be a lot about the queen. And I feel like for a while we didn't see the queen at all, at least for the second episode. I feel like I didn't see her much. Now, granted, it does switch more to Diana and Charles and everything, but I still feel like it's drags. It's slow. And I think what that does too is people think because it's almost boring, it's I feel like people can more think of it as a documentary because people, although I feel like this has changed quite a bit, I feel like a lot of people still feel like documentaries are boring. And that I feel like The Crown perpetuates that image to a certain extent because I feel like it is dull and they frame things in such a way it feels like they're giving some great soliloquy or saying something super deep when I just feel like that's not really the case in the slightest. So, and it's just, yeah, there was a bit too, and I don't think I can share it because I tried to screen share, but I think it's because it's from Netflix that's telling me I can't do it. But that talking specifically, Philip talking about how the Britannia is aging. So it starts off, the first episode starts off with a old video. I don't know if they filmed this in the original season 1 or 2 of The Crown or not, of the Claire Foy playing the Queen again, and she's launching the Britannia, which is the royal yacht, which I've actually seen. It's actually, you can go to Scotland and see it. So I actually toured that when I was in Scotland like 15 years ago. And they also held Zara Phillips, one of her wedding, her like pre-wedding reception was held there. So they still use it from time to time. Obviously, we know it's been a favorite of the Queen's. So it starts off with that and talking about the Britannia as a relic of an old age. And it really starts off strong with saying the Queen is old, the institution is old, and Charles wants to come in and take over. That's how the whole thing starts out. So I just found that I understood somewhat where they were coming from, but I also felt like it was very much a stretch. And Philip describes the Britannia in a way, and you can completely tell he's talking about it being old and obsolete and a relic of a different age. And you feel like absolutely it is a veiled reference to the Queen. It's a veiled reference to the Queen, and it's just I'm not feeling it at all. I'm not feeling it at all. So, Ansem, I see your question here. And if you guys have questions or anything like that, feel free to put them in capitals. But I'll also go through because I saw some of you guys as well agreeing that you also thought it was dull. Winter G said hello, agreed it's getting dull and soap opera ish, which I feel like is completely the case. That's just. Kenzie J said, so this season a lot like last season. I love last season. So as for some people, that may be something that they really like. But so far, I'm just not feeling it at all. Azuma asked, let me go back here and find the question. Do they fixate on the Philip cheating rumors? So it starts off with, and I feel like this from a storytelling perspective was really rushed about the death of Leonora. And I can't remember the family's name. And so they see them, they go on this trip with Diana and Charles, and then she dies at the beginning of the next episode. But I feel like I don't get a great sense of time, so I don't understand, like, she was, like, on the road to recovery, and all of a sudden she's dead. So, it's obviously very sad that child died, that's not what I'm saying, but I just thought it was weird. And then Philip is talking to, and again, this part was very slow and dragged a lot. Talking to the wife or the mother, and I can't remember, the is it Natchable or something? I can't remember. And talking to her about, well, her daughter died, so she needs to find a new hobby. And so he's helping her find the hobby of carriage driving. That's the thing. And so they're concentrating on that. And then there's a bit too, which I just thought was bizarre, where Philip was trying to explain why he's now interested in carriage driving, and he, like, couldn't get the words out, and he kept getting distracted by things. It was just weird. I just didn't really like it in the slightest. Jennifer says, I was left thinking I have mixed feelings. So, yeah, I believe that is definitely the case you could get for this series. I just am not totally liking it at all. And I feel like, again, in the beginning it was beautiful and glamorous because that was the time when royalty was more beautiful and glamorous, but I don't feel like that's as much the case now. Elsie, I'll thank you so much for talking about. Yes, if you guys haven't seen my last video, the elections, which is mostly a rant, by the way, of Megan inserting herself into elections, you feel free to watch that if you haven't already. Rock said, not interested in watching, but I would like to know your thoughts, Brittany. Yes. So I will definitely share more of my thoughts. Asma said, why do the people think The Crown is documentary? And like I said, I think it's because it seems like a documentary because it's rather dull. So I feel like that's where they're going with it. Jody, hi. Love for JK. Hello. Bridget, so far, very disappointing. I haven't finished watching all the episodes, but the casts are not believable matches and the storylines are boring, much more made up than the other seasons. And I would agree with that as well. I like the actor playing Prince Philip, but it might be because he was in Pirates of the Caribbean. It took me a minute to place him. So he played Keira Knightley's father in those movies, Jonathan Pryce. So with the wig and everything, it took me a while to remember exactly who he was. But I really enjoyed his character in that movie, and I really enjoy his presence here too. But yeah, I'm not sure. Elizabeth, I believe the actress's name who plays Diana, she is beautiful, and I enjoyed her in The Night Manager. I've seen that series, and she's very tall. She's like 6'1". She's very, very tall and willowy. So I feel like to a certain extent, she at least does sort of match Diana's physicality better than someone like Kristen Stewart, who's like 5'6". Because a woman who has height, there's just, you can't fake that much. You can put on some heels, but a woman who's 6'1", that's very different than a woman who's 5'6". So I feel like at least she fills out the height, the presence that Diana needs. But I didn't really like her. So I'm not really liking her so far in this role. I'm not liking the guy who plays Prince Charles. I feel like I hear his voice a bit. I actually like the actor who plays Prince Charles more in The Windsors, which is the satire and is funnier, I feel like, and much more engaging. Kendall Lee, hi. You haven't watched it yet. Roxanne, haven't watched it either. It's Maya Wilson. Hi, Brittany. Don't like it all so far. I do not like the actors for King Charles or Prince Philip. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people like the Dominic West for Charles. And I didn't realize he was the one who had the affair with Lily James. They were caught canoodling in Italy while he was still married. And I'm not a fan of those kind of activities. especially something done so publicly when you're still technically married. Andrea said, yes, it's slow and dull. Nancy said, it's kind of boring. Yes, it is. It, it is. It is. So, cheers to Crown Watchers, episode 1. Here I go. It is funny because when I tell people I like the Broyles, they're like, oh, don't you watch The Crown? I was like, no, not really. Because actually, I believe it's the My Princess documentary from on HBO Max is actually pretty good because it takes live cover. It doesn't do any voiceover. It's just basically people previous interviews from that time being woven together to create a story, which I find is really good. So Elsie, hello Elsie. Elsie talking to Elsie. Maya Wilson said, very gorgeous production. Not a huge fan of the new cast. Yes, again, very gorgeous production. It really, really does look exceptionally beautiful. So let's get down here a bit. Hello, Brittany. Do they have a fictional disclaimer? They do not. There is no fictional disclaimer. And I just feel like, especially the bit. Oh, and there was a couple things that really, really bothered me. One of them was this whole bit with the Queen and the cover of the Sunday Times. I haven't looked to see if that was an actual cover of the Sunday Times or not, and the way they placed it, but basically talking about how most Britons didn't really, weren't really a fan of the Queen, thought she was old-fashioned and everything, and that Charles, we need the new blood of Charles, and this gives Charles a great desire, a more desire to even to kind of push his narrative to become king. And so they did this whole bit on the Britannia where the paper arrives and they know it's bad news and they don't want the Queen to see it. So they put all the papers out, and literally right in front, as the actress playing the Queen walks up to grab the paper, they pull it away and go, oh, it's yesterday's paper. It's yesterday's paper. And they're all being super obvious about it. I was like, how could she not know there was obviously something about that paper? They kept going, oh, it was last week's. And I was like, well, why is it all with this week's? It was just such an unbelievable and bad moment that I was like, oh, come on. Come on. Everybody's trying to play like keep away with the newspaper. And I'm like, guys, this is not even sort of remotely believable in the slightest to me. And there was also a weird moment too where Princess Anne arrived on the Britannia. And so her and the Queen are heading to, and Anne's like, oh, let's walk up to this lighthouse. And the Queen's like, oh, I don't know. And Anne's like, well, we got to keep in shape. And she kind of, slaps her side or whatever. And it took me a moment. I was like, that is Anne, right? Because Anne and the Queen, there's at least 20 plus years difference between the two. Why is Anne acting like she's 65 like the Queen when she's in her early 40s or maybe even late 30s at this point? And it took me a second because I thought she was Margaret for a second. I was like, oh, maybe it's Margaret. I thought it was Anne, but maybe it's Margaret. No, it was Anne. Or sorry, yeah, it was Anne. And so I was like, I don't understand. It was weird. And then they had this moment where Anne was watching Sir Timothy Lawrence, and because the Queen mentioned, well, why are you looking at him? You're married. And Anne kind of gives a slight remark. But yes, all that to say, there is no disclaimer on The Crown right now. And I don't think there will be, because they thrive on this, that there's this ignorance now of history and memory, especially for younger people. And they like the fact that people think it's real. So they don't want to correct people and say, oh no, this is fake. Most of this is made up. Most of the people who actually lived through this say it's made up, but they enjoy being inconsistent in this presentation because it benefits their narrative, and I feel like it kind of generates publicity for it. So some of my thoughts asks, is it worth the watch? I would say no so far. I don't think it's worth the watch. I really don't. So obviously if you like it and you want to watch it, hey, more power to you. But honestly, I'm not feeling it at all. Jeff says, I didn't like it. Felt it was boring. Yeah, me too. Who else is in the boring crowd? Monica says, how disappointing to hear. I was still looking forward to watching this season. And I think there could be something really, obviously this is a crucial time. Oh, and here's the other big thing. I haven't seen Andrew or Fergie yet. I haven't seen them at all. And they are a huge portion of kind of this 90s meltdown that happened. I was like, where's Sarah and Andrew? They're huge in this. Why aren't they there. So I just don't understand why you, at least in the first episode and a half, where in the world are Andrew and Fergie? They're huge in this. We obviously haven't seen Edward either, but Edward, I don't know if we have seen him much in it so far, but in general in The Crown, I don't feel like it's he's been there much, but it's just again something that I find exceptionally odd because and they even missed out and did not include the princess and almost kidnapping attempt. I was like, that would be a great thing to mind. So I feel like they're concentrating on the wrong things and missing the better, meatier parts of the royal narrative and the royal story. Andrea says, I don't know. I'll probably pronounce her accent wrong. Emilia Stanton nails the Her Majesty's accent, but visually can't believe her as the queen. I I feel like yeah, she matches the accent. I just don't know if I feel her as a queen that much. And I will say too, I thought that they made this queen mother look exceptionally dowdy in the brief bit we saw of her, and also a bit senile because she was kind of talking about, oh, we were talking about X, Y, and Z, and Margaret's kind of like shushing her because this was about the Times article. And oh no, we can't tell Elizabeth yet about the Times article, as if she cannot figure it out or knows something about. I feel like that whole little bit was just ridiculous. Asma says, do you think William will speak out on the crown? I don't think he probably will. And I think the reason is he doesn't want to give it any more oxygen than it already has. And at this point, it just doesn't behoove him to really talk about it. So I don't see him chatting about it much. But I'm sure he's privately fuming about it. And as I understand it, and so far what we've seen, we haven't seen much of William or Harry in this. They just don't seem that engaged. William seems very serious so far, but that fits him as the firstborn child. Generally, firstborns tend to be a bit more serious. It's not always the case. And obviously, we have the tension between Charles and Diana is going on right now. Eddie says, I love British programs, but I've never been interested in watching The Crown. Yeah, I think that's a lot of people's impression, especially now. And I just don't know if this is worth really anybody's while. I feel like a documentary or something. I think The Queen, the movie, was pretty good, but this not so much because they're leaning into this more soap opera-y aspect of it, but without, I don't feel like having being able to exude the depth that they need to in these situations. Owen said Philip never cheated in real life, though. So I think that's an interesting question. Did Prince Philip cheat? That I don't know because in those royal circles, cheating is in aristocratic circles, cheating is generally, I feel like, more accepted. I think that comes from an older perspective that oftentimes when marriages were arranged for political dynasty reasons and those sorts of things, that it was okay, it was kind of allowed that people could cheat more because you're not marrying somebody for love, you're marrying somebody for profit and business or connections and those sorts of things. That doesn't happen anymore really at that time period or that was ending. So Prince Philip and the Queen are more of that generation. So I'm not saying that it never happened, but we have no concrete evidence that it ever happened. And it's never been confirmed by the woman who they're featuring, whose daughter it was Leonora. She is still alive and has never ever said that they ever had an affair. But again, it might generally, aristocrats usually are pretty low key when it comes to these things. It's not something they publicize like we do in America. I guarantee if Harry cheats on Meghan, she'll publicize it to high end to shame him. But the aristocrats, they just usually generally don't do that quite as much. And again, I think it's because there's an understanding within that system. But I think that's slowly going out by the wayside because people marry for love now, the vast majority of the time, but that wasn't the case. Prisco Castillo says, I just want to say thank God the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are not here with us. Yes, I think that's definitely the case. It would be super sad for the Queen to be with us. I don't think she's watched The Crown. I believe actors thought or hoped she did because they're like, oh, she'll love it because it's about her. But I don't feel like she really would, except for the nostalgia reasons. And that would perhaps evoke a sense of memory for her. But I think those would be in the earlier seasons. I don't think she would watch the later seasons. Kate London said, I think the princess actress character voice is pitch perfect. Yeah, I think she does have a great voice. Maggie says Tampon Gate is not boring. No, it's definitely not boring. Ariel says Dominic West is a great actor. Odd choice to play Charles. I think so. Again, I like the actor who plays him in The Windsors. I feel like that's great. Leah says, hello from Ontario. Love your video. Yes. Mostly Sky says it's boring, but that's the point. During the time when people were questioning the relevance of the monarchy, I remember people being interviewed in the street about this. I can definitely see that because there is a perception that the monarchy is outdated and it's boring. So I feel like some people are like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and make this as boring as possible. And I feel like perhaps that does confirm it, but at the same time, it's for me as a viewer, I remember watching Versailles and being very interested in what happened between episodes. And I would say it wasn't as flashy as The Great, which is on Hulu, which features Catherine the Great, but Versailles, which covers King Louis XIV, it was more of this palace intrigue. And I feel like, at least from what I've seen so far, they don't lean into the palace intrigue in a way that makes it compelling as much as shows dealing with things going back centuries. Now, that could be in part because centuries ago, those things were generally perhaps more interesting because that's the only way people had to interact with the system rather than now where we have social media, and those sort and all these different items that we can use to interact and newspapers. But the intrigue between individuals, I feel like, is what makes royalty very interesting. The courtiers, the royals themselves, the major and minor, and how all these systems interact together in a way that's both productive and counterproductive, and how they're always jockeying for power and control is, I feel like, very interesting. And I don't feel like we get much of this here, except for it's more subtle in a way and also duller. So I don't feel like it's the best. Jeff says from Wallen, Victoria, Australia, I thought it was very boring and I love your comments. Thank you. Thank you. I I'm I appreciate that. Bridget says Peter Townsend and Margaret reconnecting. What BS? Yes, I didn't think they ever reconnected after their affair thing. So I heard that and I thought that was interesting. Tanya said, so weird. I was just watching clips with Claire Foy in season 1 and 2, and it was so much better. I feel like it was. And I think because they could be there was a lot to pull from. And I think the natural drama of the sudden death of a king and this modern young woman coming into this throne who's modern and yet has grown up in a time of she's grown up in an archaic time too, and the transition from the war and everything, I feel like lends itself to a lot of interesting perspectives and interests. But I feel like as it gets closer to modern day, they're more and more interested in highlighting the dysfunction of the monarchy and portraying it negatively without kind of the balance that you see in other situations. Tanya says, I cannot remember season 4, except I loved Helena Bonham Carter as Margaret. Yes, she was awesome. I do love Helena Bonham Carter. She's a great actress. Anyone see that King Charles and Camilla got egged on a walkabout today? So that's a different question, but yes, I did see that. And I thought that gentleman was absolutely ridiculous because he's complaining about slavery, that it was the foundations of the country. And it's like, well, the foundations of the country started about 500 or so years before the modern, or what we consider now the transatlantic slave trade. So why are you egging? That has nothing to do with it. The country was essentially founded in 1066 and it goes back even earlier than that. So what are you talking about? Are you talking about Roman slave trade? Just the ignorance of people. And again, I feel like this plays into why The Crown does both as well as it does and as poorly, or as well as it does, and how people believe it is because there's such ignorance of history and understanding of history that people just they believe whatever. But I feel like definitely the Britannia, I feel like is a beautiful ship. And I just thought the comparison was interesting, but it was just one of those things. Are the Crown anti-monarchies? Yes, I've heard that a lot of the people behind the Crown are against the monarchy. And I feel like it does show through and in very subtle ways. But I feel like especially, obviously there's a lot of, although I feel like they haven't been totally 100% given Diana a pass. So I feel like that's not as, that hasn't been as like clear cut Diana is the victim as I thought it would be, but there's definitely elements of that there. Hopefully they will trash Harry and Meghan when it gets to that time. Unfortunately, they're not getting to that time. But hey, we can complain about them as soon as we get their reality TV show and we see it for the first time. Black Raven says, "Oh, thank you. I really like you, Brittany, as we all do. I worry that the Sussex squad are crazy and giving your itinerary that one more will show up and something could happen to you. So be careful." I hope not. I don't think so, but yeah, you may be talking about the trip to the UK, and that's something obviously people can attend if they want to, and it would be you can hang out with me for a week in the UK. So if that's something you want to do, let me know. And although I guess the itinerary is there, I don't think anybody could really interfere. And I feel like the Sussex squad is slowly starting to diminish, thankfully. So I think that's a good thing. Uh, how do you know how far into the present this will go? I hope it doesn't include Meg. So it's not supposed to include Meghan or Harry. They are casting for Kate. They have cast Kate. So we know at least goes into William's time in university. So I would say it probably goes through maybe 2005 or so, maybe even 2010. And again, it wasn't supposed to go on this long. I think I remember when they originally mentioned it, it was going to be 5 seasons. So the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So that we're getting into the 2000s, I feel like is already an extension of what they originally told us. So they feel like there's more things to mine. And I feel like more ways to tarnish and trash the monarchy. I feel like that's what they feel like. So they feel like they can extend and go on. So I'm it would be interesting though to see how they would portray Megan because I thought it was really funny because Megan in the Variety interview talked about how somebody would play her in maybe 100 years and that she could give Megan a call and it's like, well, Megan, you'll be dead in 100 years from now, so yeah, she can't give you a call. But I just thought it was funny that Megan was pretty convinced that whatever portrayal would be of her would be kind. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it'll be that kind to you. And it would be interesting to see how the Crown would play it if they go the pro monarchy or the pro republic route or they go the pro monarchy route. It would be really interesting. I think the more the drama is actually going the pro monarchy route, but I don't think they would do that if they did cover it. But again, now that the Netflix has the reality TV show, I'm hoping I would believe they want to mine that more than anything else. Michael Hutchinson, I truly love the first few seasons of The Crown, has been slowly gotten more boring. Yeah, I would agree. I feel like that's when I first started mentioning The Crown a bit, a lot of people in my comments said they liked the first 2 seasons. And then after that, it started getting boring. And I feel like, again, from what I've seen so far, it's dull. It is actually rather dull. Daisy Cooper, first 3 episodes were beyond anti-monarchy and pro-die. Was the whole Dodie and Dad thing correct in episode 3? I haven't seen that, but I don't believe it is from what I've heard. How they portrayed Diana and Dodie meeting. I don't think that was the case, but obviously somebody, let me know if that's not actually the case. And that's something because that's what made me a little bit nervous about The Crown is that there's part of that history I don't know quite as well, and I'm always nervous about portraying something incorrectly, especially when it comes to history, because I feel like that's something that's so messed up anymore that it's really hard. It's really hard to get good historical information. Asma asked, "Do you think they are going to portray Catherine as a gold digger?" Ooh, that could be interesting because obviously Doris to Manuel was the moniker or the joking term that they used for Catherine. And I know there was a lot of discontent about Catherine and that she was middle class and everything. So, and that there were social climbers. And so the Middletons got really hammered in the media for a long time. Meghan complains about the media. Oh, she has no place to stand when it comes to the way they treated Catherine. Because Catherine started dating William in the heyday of the paparazzi. The mid 2000s were really the heyday. Like late 90s, early 2000s was massive for that. And Catherine had to deal with people calling her names, being aggressive with her, which Meghan never ever had to deal with. But I feel like because the Middletons are considered social climbers, and some of people within even the UK, I believe they're gold diggers, would be supportive of perhaps that portrayal. So that would be something to consider as well. Elsie says, "Yep, the quality of The Crown has dropped off. I don't regret canceling Netflix one bit. Yeah, I share a family thing. So Kendall asked, "Will you watch Harry and Meghan's reality TV show?" Unfortunately, yes, I will. Yes, I will definitely be watching the reality TV show for the train wreck mentality, and also I will watch it so you don't have to. So you can always guarantee me on watching it, and I will definitely let you know what I think about it. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. And I feel like again, Netflix wants to capitalize on this, wants to capitalize on the book. And Harry and Meghan, if they're smart, they want to do that too. Now we've heard that they want to keep pushing the reality TV show back. I could see them even randomly dropping it on a day. All of a sudden, Harry and Meghan's reality TV show, bada bing, bada boom, it's on Netflix. I could completely see that happening. Not doing a ton of publicity because again, with Harry and Meghan, you have to deal with the blowback of the publicity because it's both really bad and really good. There's not this general nice banal reaction. People aren't on either side. Some people love Harry and Meghan, some people hate Harry and Meghan. And so there's not a general good feeling. People have strong opinions and they're not necessarily good for Harry and Meghan. So I feel like that's something to think that Netflix has probably considered, is that they don't want Harry and Meghan to do hardcore press about it because then you have to deal with aggressive and nice questions, I should say. Jennifer said, "Did you feel like the audience level of intelligence is underestimated?" And definitely in that scene where they were hiding the queen's paper, I was just like, "Oh, come on. Are you like, you're playing keep away with the paper." It's like literally she's 2 seconds away from grabbing it or has her hands on it, and the guy pulls it away and makes this big weird hubbubaloo about it. And I'm like, if I was the queen, I'd be like, "Give me the gosh darn paper right now." It's like the game they were trying to play with it. I was like, I feel like that just would not happen in real life. And I feel like too, the actor Dominic West, he has this big monologue about being the prince and obviously the Queen Victoria and everything, and that Edward the Seventh, if he had been able to come in earlier, he would have done all these great things. And I just thought, granted, if you don't know anything about history or how monarchies work or anything, perhaps you would buy it. But I'm thinking to myself, well, I get it. Queen Victoria, she was aware, especially in her day and age as a woman, that men are always preferable to women in terms of leadership, especially in a role like that. So I'm sure to a certain extent, I know she did keep her son at bay quite a bit. And I think that was because she did not want him weaseling in and taking the throne from her in some way, or having other people within the government put pressure on her to retire. So she kept him in the dark. And that's her right. She's the monarch. But there's just this emphasis. It's like, well, he would have come in and changed everything and wouldn't everything be better? And it's like, well, do you really know that? Were people clamoring to get rid of Victoria? I'm sure sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't. But it was just this effort of trying to portray Victoria badly too, that I'm like, I just don't totally get the connection you're trying to make here. Yes, there was an element of the fact that Victoria was older, especially once she became quite reclusive after Albert's death. I think the emphasis and the interest in removing her kind of grew after that. But at the same time, she's still queen, and she ruled over this great expansion of empire. And at that point too, she was mostly a figurehead. So, but anyways, there's just this whole explanation of everything I just thought was a little much. Jess, aka SBD Girl 88. Originally 4 seasons, fans demanded caused 5 and 6. Yes, as fans kept demanding, and it's gotten more boring. So I guess they helped us. Um, Victoria said the scandalous Boleyn family is pretty good. I've watched the Tudors, which I actually thought was good. Because here's the other problem I'm having with The Crown, is that I can't follow the timeline too well. Because at first that little girl is in remission from cancer, and then all of a sudden she's dead between 2 episodes. And it's unclear how much the seasons changed, because we had this thing too where we had the whole paper situation, and all of a sudden they're Balmoral, and it seems like it's the morning, or it's the same day. And I feel like I was like, well, wouldn't it take time for Balmoral, because they went to a lighthouse? Wouldn't that take time to actually get to Balmoral, to get to the dock? Like I felt like the timeline wasn't making a ton of sense. And I remember the Tudors being, obviously they kind of to a certain extent rush through things because they covered long periods of time because they went through all 6 of his wives and what was it, 3 seasons? Was all that they had? Or no, was it 4? I think it was 4 because 2 was I think the first one was getting rid of Catherine of Aragorn, at least from Henry's perspective, getting rid of Catherine. Second season was Anne Boleyn, and then the next 2 dealt with the last 4 wives. So I feel like things went rather quickly. I think maybe one of the seasons was short too. Now I can't remember. But because it's been a while since I've seen that, but I did like it. But I felt like at least the continuity I could follow. And Versailles, the continuity I could follow. So far here, I can't follow the continuity. Cindy Lou asked, were any of the tiaras accurate replicas? We did see the Queen Mothers, and that one seemed pretty accurate. It's the honeycomb one that Camilla has. So Camilla was given 2 of the Queen's or the Queen Mother's tiaras. And those are the only ones we've ever seen her use. I believe she was also lent the Tech tiara, but we've never actually seen her wear it. It actually has kind of half moons on it. It's kind of cool and interesting, but we have not seen that one in golly, maybe almost 100 years. It's been a long time since we've seen that one. I think the Queen Mother wore it maybe years ago, but you can just really tell they're fake. I would almost appreciate it if they got us like real ones that weren't exact matches, because then I can go, oh, it looks real. Looks real. Oh, Julia, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. That's so kind of you. Thank you. Let's look here. D Charger said I should be in bed. It's 1:33 a.m. Night from Epsom, UK. Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry you're up so late. I put up the survey, and so many people wanted this time. I was hoping it would be tomorrow too, so I can watch more of it. Yes, Robin Smarts, thank you for Tudor being 4 seasons. Season 6, I highly doubt it after this train wreck. I think they'll definitely. I mean, they're filming season 6 right now. I got confused for a while because I saw them filming, and I'm like, I thought the season's coming out soon. And so I'm like, I thought all the episodes came out at once. Like, what are they doing? Are they doing this thing now where they're releasing like unsolved mysteries? They're only releasing 3 episodes at a time. I'm more interested in unsolved mysteries than this hot mess. But I love true crime things. Those are awesome. But there's some really interesting things that we could have. Natalie Dormer was a buyer. She was amazing. Yes. Unbelievable Anne Boleyn. If you haven't seen the Tudors, the beheadings always get to me. I hate them so much. But Natalie as Anne Boleyn, oh, she was awesome in that. She was fabulous. She is my favorite Anne Boleyn. And not that we've seen a ton of them, but she had, I feel like, the charisma to really pull that off, because Anne Boleyn she was really sharp, actually. And she was, not only did she want King Henry to get a divorce, but she's actually a really strong Protestant. So she was actually pushing Protestantism on him, which I found was really, really fascinating. And I just thought that was fabulous. So I really just absolutely loved that. And it was something that I really appreciated. Jody asked, Brittany, what is your email address? So it's just editor@royalnewsnetwork.com. So if you ever want to drop me a line, you can. Honey Owen says, when does H and Harry and Meghan's Netflix show start? We do not know. But again, like I said, I feel like it could be randomly dropped on any day of the week. And kind of like they've done a couple of times now with record albums. They've done that, I believe, with Taylor Swift and Beyonce, and all of a sudden, poof, there's a record online overnight. So I feel like that's, again, what they would do, because the circus surrounding any publicity with Harry and Meghan has a mix of positive and a lot of negative. And I feel like more negative than positive. And I feel like Netflix too is a little nervous about Harry and Meghan. So, and how well this will do, because Meghan already kind of set it up as if I wonder if it'll be as boring as The Crown. Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be funny? I think that would be hysterical. That'd be really, really funny. So looking through, John Alvarez, hello from Yonkers, New York. Hello. Dodo and Di were introduced via his dad during some kind of award ceremony sponsored by his dad. So yes, Bridget, thank you for answering that question, because I knew the whole dinner setup they did in The Crown was inaccurate. I knew that for sure, but I wasn't exactly positive how they actually met, because I was 10 or so, I think, when Diana died. I can't remember. So I was a kid, so I don't remember it very. I remember hearing about things afterwards, and I believe I read a book about Diana, but it's been a while. So it's just, I love history, so sometimes I focus more on history. So I'm trying to figure out, especially because I've mentioned the book club before, mixing, do I want to do history books? Do we want to do modern day books? Or do we want to do like a combination? I think combination would be fun. Ariel says, I won't pay for a thing that directly benefits Harry and Meghan. That is true. I think what will be interesting to see is how well Harry and Meghan's thing does and how happy Netflix will be with it. Because we've seen what's happened with the Rings of Power. So that's the Lord of the Rings series that's on Amazon Prime, which is apparently most people have concluded it's done actually rather poorly considering they poured $1 billion into it. And so it'll be interesting to see how they calculate success. Will it be views? And will these views translate into whatever Netflix needs? So, will people sign up to watch Harry and Meghan's thing? Will they stay and watch the whole thing? Or will it be something? I feel like what's happening with Spotify is that fewer people are watching it and most people are just waiting for the media reaction to it. And so that means I don't feel like as many ears in the case of Spotify or eyes will be on Harry and Meghan's reality TV shows and podcasts because most people are like, well, I'll just let the media tell me what's in it and they won't actually watch or listen to it themselves. And so I feel like that's what people are finding out is, again, I've always thought Harry and Meghan create a lot of noise, but they are not helping companies actually make money. That's always been my supposition is that they're noisemakers, but it's not turning into cold hard cash. And any business, they want cold hard cash. And if Harry and Meghan can't do that for them, that's a problem. Tanya says Glenda was the best, I think, than Kate Blanchett, despite the truth about CB's movies. So yeah, because Kate Blanchett played Queen Elizabeth I. Tony says, we'll watch a 3-part Lady Jane. Thank you. Hungry for historical dramas. Yes, and they have Empress Elizabeth. They've also just renewed on Netflix, which I need to watch as well. Sorry, I just knocked my table. Ritz, I like what you said. So you don't have to. Yes, I will watch Harry and Meghan's reality TV show. If you're just joining me, I will watch Harry and Meghan's reality TV show, so you don't have to. So Jody asked, which reality will we see in their reality? That is a massive, very interesting question that I do not know because their reality seems to change rather consistently. They're not very consistent on what their reality is because their narrative changes all the time based on their thought processes or what their agenda they're pushing at that particular moment. They don't seem to have anything consistent. Meredith says, I stopped watching after season 2 as some off. It frustrated me and it didn't line up or just made up. Yes. So, and I started watching season 1 when it initially came out. But again, for me, I was like, I don't know how much of this is true. And I prefer to know more truth than fiction, or it just started to feel, I just wasn't feeling it at the time. Eddie says, is Kate pregnant? I don't think she is. She's still, obviously she does suffer from some severe morning sickness, but she's pretty thin right now. And I just don't think her and William want to have another child. Although a 4th baby Wales would be fantastic. It would be lovely to see. But also now they're the Prince and Princess of Wales. There's a lot riding on their shoulders. They have a lot of stress around Harry and Meghan. I feel like a baby could add the baby would just add more stress. It would add more joy, but it would also add more stress. So I don't feel like that's something they really want to do right now. Rachel G says, I'm so glad you're going to watch so I don't have to. My brain would explode. Yeah, listening to the podcast, Meghan's podcasts are bad enough. I don't know how bad the reality TV show is going to be. The podcasts are awful. And I feel like the reality TV show is going to be highly, highly produced. So that means there's just going to be not a lot of authenticity, a lot of overacting. Because again, that's Meghan's speed. So we'll see. Ariel says, I'm sure they'll be easy to find a bootleg copy. Probably. The shot of Will's holding Diana's hand on the jet from in E1, it was interesting, or episode 1. They lingered on her sapphire ring, and I thought about how it's on his wife's hand now. Yeah, I did think that was an interesting little scene, and so that wasn't too bad. I did like that. Because obviously Diana and William were exceptionally close. It'll be interesting to see how they handle Harry going forward, especially with the deal in place and things. If they'll, because from what I've heard, they give him more favorable treatment in the show, and that's partly because, well, he's on their dime now, so they want to protect their property. So it'll be interesting to see if they throw William under the bus more, especially because I believe William was in the middle of fighting with Diana when she died. I believe didn't take her phone calls because he was frustrated with the paparazzi present while they were on their vacation because he kind of knew Diana for all the good she did. She very much liked to play games with the press, and William was just not a fan of that in the slightest. Even as a young man, he was not a fan of that. Uh, Sharita says, hello and good evening from Suriname, South America. Hello. Also watch anything with the wonderful Lucy Wosley. She is a treasure. Yes, she is. Asma asked, Diana had a professional working relationship with the press. Harry seems to ignore this fact and that she invited them to her house and talked on the phone. Yes. So Diana played a lot of games with the press, was very close to them. I believe it's not Richard Eden. Is it Richard Eden? I feel like one of the Richards, because there's Richard Palmer, Richard Eden. And if you remember the other, let me know. Oh, I'm blanking. But she was very close to them, and she would call them and she would interact with them in a way that most of the royals now would not, I don't feel like, and that Harry just completely misses anymore. He just, I don't feel like, understands his mother's desperate need for attention a lot, or just kind of ignores it in general. And I feel like that's something William has had to deal with. And again, I feel like William understands his mother a lot better, whereas Harry has this very shiny and media driven understanding of his mother, rather than William, who understood both her flaws and her features. Lee says, I binged all 10 episodes and it was definitely isn't going to damage the monarchy's reputation as much as predicted, in my opinion. Love your channel. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's good to hear. I don't think it will, because I think at this point too, people see Charles and they see him working, and there's been a lot of positive reception to Charles as king. I thought it was interesting when I was watching Megyn Kelly's interview with Christopher Anderson, who's written several books on the royals. Golly, that guy knows nothing about the monarchy. I was shocked at how little he knew. Shocked, absolutely shocked. And I feel like some people, especially, they live in that bubble where they just see the whole Diana, Camilla, Charles thing, and they just totally focus on that, which I feel like that's the case in Christopher's understanding. But I feel like a lot of people have moved on. They've grown in this situation, and they see the complexities of these relationships and these dynamics. And Camilla has been there for over 15 years now. She really hasn't stepped a foot wrong. She's kept in this background. She hasn't overstepped. She hasn't been rude or anything like that. So I feel like people are starting to accept Camilla, and I feel like they're understanding, well, yeah, Diana had her faults, Camilla had her faults, Charles has their faults, but hey, Charles and Camilla they're not so bad. So I feel like Charles and Camilla will just continue to go forward and grow from here. But I do think that the crown, even though it's perhaps not as damaging as some people were fearing it would be, I think the combination of the reality TV show, Harry's book, and Meghan's interference in US politics, if you haven't watched that video yet of mine, you guys should. It's, I guess, more of a rant probably than anything else. At the end of the day, I feel like it is starting to erode the foundations of the monarchy. To a certain extent, it is starting to, all of it together slowly damages, I feel like, for future generations who perhaps don't have a great understanding or respect for the monarchy. eh, Tanya says, yes, I want to see Brittany do a video on the history of Diana and Princess Kate's engagement ring. Yes, I had a request to do engagement ring videos for Royal Fashion News. And so I definitely want to do that and get over to that at some point. Robin Smarts. Oh, I agree, Britt. Her Majesty is nobody's fool ever. Yes, she's nobody's fool when it came to that newspaper bit. I don't know what that was about, but I was like, if I was Her Majesty, I'd be looking at that going, give me that paper. Come on now. Tony says, I would love Fergie's ring with the ruby. It fit her red hair. Yes. And I also loved Eugenie's engagement ring, which is similar. I like that too. It's hard because I like some of the celebrity engagement rings more, because royals have to, they're more constrained in a way. And I wasn't a fan of the big blue, so Kate's sapphire, but it has grown on me, and I feel like it really does fit her. Lucy Wosley fit to rule series is very good. Good. Angela Bell's, Brittany, I'm a new subscriber since before Prince Philip died. I've read and watched it on TV since King Charles III and Diana were married off and on. Yes. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. And yeah, it's so, since before Prince Philip died. Prince Philip's death, I feel like, and the Queen's death, I feel like gives Netflix even more license to take more risks with the stories, which I feel like is very sad. Bradley says there's nothing Netflix would like better than to get into a court battle with Meghan and Harry. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but that would be interesting. This fan asks, can we fast forward to with King William? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to totally work, but it's I think we're all looking forward to Prince William being king, but I also feel like because his family's so young, I think it is good that that burden's not on his shoulders yet, especially because there is so much focus on the Brits. Obviously, there's been families, so King Wilhelm Alexander, you got King Philip of Spain and King Philippe of Belgium. They had fairly young children when they became king, but I feel like the pressure and intensity on the Brits is just unbelievably magnified compared to the rest of the family. So I feel like it's good that at this point, because they have young children, that Catherine and William are not subjected yet to the enormous pressure of being king and queen. John Oliver says, just watch a video about Meghan voting. Shame on her. She doesn't know how to read the room. Yes. Yeah. The voting thing just still, it irks me so much. Not that she can vote, that's fine, but that she's telling us to vote and she's helping other people vote through a program she's connected with through R12, which is also run by a British royal. It's like, I thought we fought a war 250 some odd years ago, so we don't have to deal with crap like this anymore. But apparently not. Meghan, self-proclaimed Duchess of the United States. Jean, hi, Brittany. Love your commentary. I'm from California. I watched the first episode early this morning, and I was very disappointed. Not that it was so impressive in previous seasons. It was just lacking. And I feel like that's so true. It's just lacking. Honestly, if I didn't have to watch it, I don't think I would have finished. I would start watching it or be all that invested in finishing watching it. I think I will finish watching it and doing an overall view, but at this point, it's great to get your guys' thoughts. But I'm so far, it's not something I would choose to continue watching if I'm not watching something else. Actually, currently right now, because I do cycle through different shows, I'm watching Frasier, if y'all are curious. And I need to, because there's royal shows I want to watch, but I was like, I want to focus so I can make sure to do great reviews on them. So I just need something silly and fun to watch. I watch Frasier. And I've watched like Golden Girls. I like the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I've gotten back to the oldies because they're better than what they're putting out anymore. And that's just the God's honest truth there. I feel like Meredith says her son was worried for us, a little out there. Robin Smart says, can you imagine the receipts Netflix would unload on the public if there ever was a lawsuit? Yeah, because I've always wondered if Harry and Meghan will at some point get breach of contract. So that'll be interesting to see if that ever happens. I don't think so, probably, but still it'll be. I'm wondering if Netflix is worried, especially after Meghan basically threw her own reality TV show under the bus with Variety, and basically threw Netflix and its content under the bus, saying that she found nothing she could watch on it and would just scroll through and be like Netflix going, thanks. There's $100 million down the drain, and they're already draining money. So. Andrea says, I wonder what props budget was this for this season. Two stolen trucks had $20,000 worth of Imperial Russian props alone. Ooh, that's bad. Yes, I've heard that there's a scene with the Russian czars, and when Nicholas and his family were killed by Soviet troops, basically. And I've heard that's quite graphic. So it'll be interesting to see what that's like, because I do find the Russian history very interesting. There's a book called, the author's name is Simon, and I can't remember the rest of his name because it's like two names put together, Montefort, I think. And he has a book called the Romanovs. And so he goes, the chapters are like, I think probably 30 to 50 to 100 pages long, depending on the czar, and he goes through each czar of the Romanov line, which I actually found really enjoyable. I did have to get a new book though, because my poor co-host, who's right next to me, sleeping like a log, peed on it as a puppy. She just got on the front cover and peed on it. Why? No clue why she didn't like the Romanovs and decided to pee on it, but she did. She did. Robin Smart says, I'm so bummed Natalie didn't go onto more meaty parts. She played the Queen Mum recently in something. Yeah, so this is Natalie Dormer who played, so I'm going back a little bit, who played Anne Boleyn in The Tudors. She was fabulous. And yeah, I am surprised as well she didn't go on and do more, because I thought she was marvelous in that so much. Oh, okay. We see block user. We see spam here. So yes, I just blocked the spam in case anybody is worried about that. Elsie, what do you think about the Princess Martha Louise being stripped of her title for merching? So this is really interesting, and I do want to do a video on this. So this is Princess Martha Louise. So she is technically the firstborn child of the King of Norway, but because of succession laws, it's actually her younger brother who is the crown prince. And so Martha Louise is marrying basically like an oil salesman, shaman, fake shaman guy. And he's also American. And he's also an African American, I believe. I don't know exactly his ethnicity, but he's basically a snake oil salesman, and most people don't trust him. So Martha Louise basically had to give up pretty much everything like Harry and Meghan. She gets to keep her titles, but she's been stripped of all of her royal patronages. Some of them were kicking her to the curb, though, because she is a little flighty and loosey-goosey. So she does believe in talking to angels. Not in the way that most of us, I feel like, would, if you're Catholic and you pray, sometimes you're praying to angels. It's not in that way. It's like angels speak to her and through her more in a weird way. So she has basically been stripped of that. And part of it was because she was merching and they were concerned, I think, about her marrying this guy as well. Sadly, he came into her life shortly after her ex-husband committed suicide on Christmas. So I feel like there's been a lot of tragedy there, unfortunately. So I feel like it's not sad situation. Jules, hi from Australia. First time I've ever been online while you've been live. Yay! I've been subscribed for a couple months now. Totally love your videos. You're great to listen to, commentating as events unfold. Thank you so much. So glad you have been subscribed. I appreciate it. I know this is probably live streams. I do enjoy live streams because it's a fun way to interact with you guys and just get different questions, different thinking. And so I just really appreciate it. Asma, or Robin Smarts and perhaps Asma both said Richard Kay, that's who I was thinking of, is one of the journalists that worked with Diana quite closely. So that I do remember. Mostly Sky says Dodie and Diana were barely together 1 month when the accident happened. He was after her for some time before she finally accepted. This was according to her assistant. Yes, I remember their relationship was very, very short. And so it is quite sad. Yeah. Elsie says, yeah, Mila Wilson, a book club would be fun. Maybe in another YouTube channel for Brittany. Oh, so many YouTube channels. I feel like I'm having a tough time keeping up the two I do have. So, but I do love books. I love royal books. I've been collecting them. I went on a bit of a binge recently and bought quite a few. And I'm looking forward to reading them when I get a chance because I think I'm hoping they'll be great. Azima says, isn't being famous for the sake of being famous a reality TV personality? Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. And that's Megan Speed. That's Megan Speed. She's always wanted to be famous, not really wanting to be an actress. Matt MAPG asked, what happened to Downton Abbey? I believe there was something new coming out about it fairly recently, but I haven't seen much since. So that's been an interesting show. I did start watching that a bit, but I didn't finish that one either. I know some people are like, how can you love royals and not watch Downton Abbey? I did love Versailles and the Tudors, but yeah, I mean, and most people, I'm seeing this comment here from Gleeful Me, Tudors was interesting and beautiful, but not very accurate. I mean, most of these shows won't be accurate. Obviously, something like The Great is not accurate at all. But I feel like if you can get echoes of the real thing, I feel like that does help people. And it does, I would hope any historical series would get people more interested in the actual history itself. Although I will say, I feel like Hollywood's taking a lot of liberties with history anymore. I think more so than even before. I think they always did, but I feel like that we're seeing that even more now. Let's looking through here. Terry says, I don't intend on watching anything on Netflix. I canceled my subscription when they hired Harry and Meghan. I actually stopped watching when the Obamas were hired. Both couples are toxic. I canceled around the Cuties time. That was my thing when I canceled. Although I guess I can say I used my parents. But at this point too, it's like you flip between so many. You have so many subscription services now. It's hard to keep track of all of them. And and it's like you end up paying for so much, it's like you're paying for cable anyways. And Netflix too, I feel like once they started having a lot of their own content is pretty bad in my opinion. I tried to watch this one show, Friends from College, and it was like portrayed as the new Friends, and it was like the first scene was like a sex scene. And I was like, this isn't totally Friends. And then I just thought, I only got like 10, I want to say 5 to 10 minutes in. It seemed like all the characters were like just awful, like personality wise, and their actions were all awful. And it's like, well, I don't want to watch this. So I've never been very impressed. But I do like Netflix's documentary series. Oh, goodness. Sorry, there was a big something fell from upstairs, and I was like, didn't know what it was. Oh, Tanya, thank you so much for the super sticker. You are so kind. Let me see if I'm missing anyone. Oh, Elizabeth as well. Thank you so much for the tip. Megan's campaign slogan, make America a monarchy again. Yes, that is my suggested campaign slogan for Meghan Markle. We'll see how far that gets her. Because I just thought, oh, that's kind of her speed, make America a monarchy again, because it feels like that's what she really wants to do. She sees herself as this American duchess, like not just an American who happens to be a duchess, but like a duchess of America, which is not what she is in the slightest. She is a duchess of the United Kingdom, a place she no longer lives and no longer cares about. And again, if she could tell me 5 things about Sussex, I'd be shocked. But she uses that title very liberally. And so I just don't like that. Jennifer, oh, thank you so much. Unrelated, the ballet pink is beautiful. Oh, thank you. I feel like my hair is not, it always confuses me because it's mirrored and backwards. But my hair is not the best today, but it is, I do really, pink is definitely my color. So I try to use it as much as I can. The Czar series on Netflix, The Last Romanovs and Power, I found enjoyable. Combo of documentary and costume drama. Yes, I've thought about watching that one. This is from Robin Smarts. I thought about watching that, and I wasn't sure how I felt about the reenactment / documentary, because I feel like sometimes it's helpful and then sometimes not so much. I know I have like weirdly specific preferences on things. So take that for what you will. But I just do love history and I love documentaries, especially really, really well done ones. I feel like you can just get incredibly a great picture. I feel like, again, I believe it's My Princess one from HBO, I thought was really good because it didn't take, although there was a section of it that I absolutely hated, because they were doing a fox hunt and showed the poor little rabbit in the middle of all the dogs. I think it was a rabbit. I hope it wasn't an actual fox. Oh, that makes me feel worse. But I always think it's great as much as you can to take voices from that time period talking about that specific situation, because that gives you a better perspective of what people were thinking at the time. And although hindsight is helpful in terms of you can have people reflect on something years later, and I think that is beneficial as well, I think there's something to going back to the fact and having the voices of that particular time explain to you their thought process or what they're thinking about particular things. So I thought that series was particularly good because there was no narrative in terms of nobody was narrating it. Nobody was guiding you. It was a guided tour of those times of Diana, but in a very different way. So I did think it was good. And I saw coverage things I haven't seen before. So I just thought that was really, really fabulous. Disfan says, I sent a card to the King and Prince of Wales along with Princess Royal when the Queen died just to show my support from the USA. Remove the titles. Oh, that is very kind. I'm sure they really did appreciate it. And it will just be, it is sad to see the Queen die. I mean, and I know at some point it would have happened, but definitely it sounded like they were not expecting it at all. And it was, whatever happened with her was very, very, very sudden and completely unexpected. And I just, and that's hard. That's hard. It's one thing I feel like if you're anticipating it, you're kind of aware and prepared for it. And again, I feel like Harry, especially missing out on seeing his grandmother for the final time, that will haunt him for the rest of his life, because he was there and he could have seen her, and he didn't get to see her a lot the last year of her life, and he decided not to go. And I feel like that was just a massive, massive mistake. Elsie, all your live streams are so fun. Oh, thank you. The subscriber comments are awesome. You have an awesome audience. Thank you. Well, it's all you guys. I think these are so fun, and I love being able to chat with you. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to share everybody's perspective. And I love how all the time, pretty much. We always have such great commentary and very respectful. And I hope that always remains on here because I feel like respect, because I would love, if there's a Megan fan who hangs out here, because I answered questions last week from someone who's clearly a Sussex stan in some way or another. And it's like, I don't mind the questions because it gives me a chance to explain some of our thought processes. And I feel like that's a good thing, especially for those who, I feel like a lot of the Megan fans live in ignorance because they just don't really understand what the monarchy means to people and why people are so invested in it. And I get it. It's kind of a complicated thing, but as the more you learn about it, the more fascinating it is. And I feel like too, especially if you love history like me, the more you appreciate it. And for some young people, I get it that they're not as invested in it yet, but I always feel like I meet people who said, "Yeah, I didn't care about history in high school at all, but now I'm like, I really want to know some, I really want to know things." I've noticed that from people. And I actually had somebody, I was on a business trip with them, and a coworker like who didn't know something really, really basic about the Civil War. And I did know it. And I feel like I knew nothing about the Civil War. Like the Civil War is not I don't know that much about American history, really, not compared to some people. And I live in the South now, and obviously there's some really strong opinions about certain things in the South, but it's like, I know nothing about the Civil War. And so they just wasn't that important when I went to high school, but I love European history and I love learning about times past and how they can affect us now. So I feel like that is important thing. So, Diane Claire said, beautiful background, but it's much more like a silent movie with facial expressions galore. What a drag. That is so true. Again, the cinematography in The Crown is absolutely fabulous. It's a gorgeously shot show. It's incredible, but it just feels weirdly like we're watching people do, like, they're not even pulling like the best moments, if that makes sense. It's like they're showing us the most banal things and acting like they're super interesting. And it's like I would rather them show us some like heightened situations in some way, but it's like driving around in the boat in the Caribbean. I was like, or not in the Caribbean, I shouldn't say. In the Mediterranean, well, it's beautiful, but I don't see much of I don't see how this advances the storyline much is my perspective. So I've overall was really underwhelmed by it, as I am with most modern things in Hollywood anymore. That's my personal opinion. I really do absolutely. Again, I go back to older shows anymore. At least going back 10 years, at the very least, you get something that's a little bit better and not quite as woke. Hawaiian Amazon said, a question, if the monarchy has to follow the rules, who is making sure it's followed? Is there some type of council that represents the people? That's a really interesting question. So obviously there are government checks and balances, but it's mostly something that happens within the family. And I feel like generally that has been mostly the case throughout history, is that basically it's the family correcting each other in a lot of ways. And it's the courtiers. Their job is to basically keep everybody in line. And, the men in gray that Diana talked about, their job is to help people keep within the institution because their job is to protect the institution. Everybody's job should be not to protect perhaps maybe an individual except for the monarch themselves, but protect the institution as a whole because that protects everybody by extension. So they work together to try to protect it. Obviously, if there's a monarch or a member steps out of a line, now if it's the monarch, they might be reprimanded privately, perhaps by the prime minister, going, "You really can't interfere in this situation." Because I didn't feel like, for example, the Queen's conversation with the Prime Minister Majors, it was that I feel like that is a conversation that could technically happen. She's asking for money for the yacht Britannia, and he's saying, "Well, no, I'm sorry, but this is not something we can probably do right now." I don't know the history surrounding that particular, if a conversation like that happened, or if it's portrayed accurately if it did. But again, I see the relevance of him saying, "I'm sorry, but an expenditure like this, it has no benefit to our government and has no benefit to the people." And the Queen's kind of trying to argue, well, there's always been a yacht in the, in the monarchy since Charles II. It's like, yeah, but that was the only way people could get around was in a royal yacht in a lot of situations, and that's not the case anymore. There's airplanes, and airplanes by that point had gotten a lot safer. Obviously, at the time the Queen first became queen, planes were still rather unsafe in a lot of ways. So there had been great, and there now is fantastic advances in technology. So having a yacht just financially, fiscally makes no sense. So government has to say no sometimes. They have to say, no, we cannot justify this expense to the public, to the people. And to me, that is a conversation that could very much happen. And again, they are protecting the institution in a way. And the government has certain things that they must follow. And so the prime minister goes, well, I can do X, but I can't do Y. And I feel like that could happen. But those are things done behind closed doors with everybody understanding that whatever decision we make, it must be best for the institution, the people, and the government. So if we can follow all those three things, those should be fine. But if we go outside of that realm, like with Harry and Meghan and what they're doing, that's when it becomes problematic because Harry and Meghan are rogue. They had no intention of helping everybody else protect the institution and the government. Meghan wants to do her own thing and just dragged Harry along because he just he thinks I think she's a cat's meow, so he just follows her and follows her rule. And I think he does have this huge complex about being the spare, massive complex about being the spare. So in a way, they are the antithesis of it because they're damaging the institution, which is a united entity with government, the family, and the palace itself, all there to help maintain the status quo that's been around for at least since 1066. Maya says it's only a matter of time before King Charles strips Harry and Meghan of their titles. I sure hope so. It needs to end. Meghan, especially interfering in politics, she needs to stop doing that. I don't care if she says she's just encouraging people to vote. What she's also doing is telling them who to vote for. Because we all know, like all celebrities do, is they tell us to vote, but they want us to vote a particular way. And then they get mad at the public when they vote a Republican into office. And all of a sudden they're all mad about it. And because there was this big hullabaloo when Brian Kemp won over Stacey Abrams 4 years ago, and there has been a rematch, and Kemp blew her out of the water this time. I mean, the race was tight in 2018, but it's just this idea that actors and a lot of entertainers want people to vote, but they want people to vote in a certain way. So when Meghan does the same thing, she's telling us that not only did I vote, but you should vote the same way I did, even though she's not telling us that directly. That's what she's indirectly telling us, if that makes sense. So just looking back here, we'll probably wrap up in a bit because I know some people are up super late. And so y'all, if you're up very, very late and you have work tomorrow, especially, please go to bed because if you need your sleep, I do not fault anybody in the slightest. Elsie says, did anyone see the post from Twitter about the squatties getting their quarterly bonuses? They get bonuses? I mean, I'm not surprised that they get paid if they do. That some people do that would not surprise me in the slightest. I wanted to Kendall says, I wanted to Meghan when she first entered the scene, but quickly switched sides when it started to look like she was acting the whole time. Yes, and I feel like that's the thing. I felt like she was acting a lot, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's just checks a lot. Robin Smarts asked, Britt, do you know about the Queens of Fabergé collection she has from the Romanov court? I don't know how much Fabergé she has. She doesn't really have any Fabergé jewelry as far as I'm aware, because some of the Fabergé tiaras are gorgeous. And you actually see pictures of the entire Romanov collection that the Soviets took, and most of those have been lost to history, most of those pieces. But I don't know how much the Queen has of Fabergé. I think she does have some Fabergé eggs. I have to look through some of my books again to see exactly what she has. So if anybody doesn't know, Fabergé was I believe they were Russian. Well, pretty much they're known for being connected to the Russian court. So they could have been from a different country, but I'm pretty sure they were Russian themselves. And so they were known as Fabergé, and they created those famous Fabergé eggs. And they've also done tiaras and jewelry, and they're very much known for their very delicate style. And there's some really, really gorgeous pieces out there. So that's definitely something I'd love to cover is Fabergé because they are really fascinating. Gina asks, how many podcast episodes will Meghan put out before they cancel? I think they'll go through the whole season, and I think they'll see what happens after that. Again, I feel like Meghan causes a stink when her podcast first drops, but I don't know how many people will continue to go back to it because I don't feel like there's any benefit to anybody but Meghan because it's a giant ego trip for her to tell people how great she is despite everything that happened to her. Despite, all the things the media has said, this is like her giant clap back going, well, I'm not everything everybody said I was. And essentially concluding, and we can essentially all conclude that, yes, you were everything the media said you were. I love a lot of their shoes, but I am not watching The Crown because it is painful still to many people. As a person of British ancestry, I find it invasive and not very truthful. Vivian Underwood says this. Yes, I get totally agree. Robin Smart says, "Oh, Tom Cruise gets it, and Meghan Markle and Harry don't." That's true. So Tom Cruise apparently spent some time with the Queen. I'm still not sure how much I buy that. That he's like had lunch with her a bunch of times. Not sure, but so yeah. Oh, and Azuma says, "Yes, go to sleep, Azuma. I give you have a fantastic night." Um, Elsie says, "Yes, she may have a Fabergé egg." I believe she has a Fabergé egg. I believe at least she does have that. And a lot of, European houses do, and some of them have gone up to auction. I think one of the Rothschilds has gone up to auction before. Jules Smudge says, "I married in the same year as King Charles and Diana did. And a lot of people in my generation remember a lot of the things in the media as they occurred. The crown is authentic in some ways, but fictional too." Yes, it is mixing fictional and reality. And I feel like that's sometimes the danger, is that people do remember, but they don't remember exactly. So the Crown places this little nugget of, well, maybe X, Y, and Z happened. But then perhaps it really didn't, and people don't necessarily know that. So, guys, I'm just looking through here to see if there's anything else here. But I think I'll wrap up here because obviously, like I said, it's late for some people, and it is getting later in the evening for me as well. And so, guys, I'll see Laurel's comment here. Love being able to finally watch this live. I have been fascinating with royal history since I was a little girl. Love Diana as little, and I still remember watching the royal wedding live on TV. Yes, it was a gorgeous wedding. I feel like a very, very historic one in so many ways. And I feel like so many people remember that. I remember getting up early and watching Catherine Williams, and begrudgingly getting up and watching Harry and Meghan's part of it because I was not a fan of Meghan. But I really wanted to know if her wedding dress was pretty and what tiara she wore and what title they got. And I was disappointed. I was very disappointed with her look and the tiara. It was sad. So anyways, guys, thank you so much. Okay, and Fabergé, that's what I thought, that they were French, but they were born in St. Petersburg. Okay, that makes sense. Carl Fabergé. That makes sense. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this live stream. I thought this was fun. We will have another one, as we always do, Saturday morning, and I'll be looking through finishing the whole series and giving you guys my final thoughts. But I thought it would be fun to jump on and have a little bit of a chat. I'm bummed I couldn't show you guys some of the images, but I think I would get. It didn't seem like the system wanted me to because of copyright issues. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.